Hey folks, Scott here, coming to you with a movie review like I promised you I would. And I don't know how many times I've done this, but hopefully this time I will be able to get through it. The movie I'm reviewing here is the 2019 superhero thriller film called Glass. That's written, produced, and directed by M. Night Shyamalan. And it's basically a sequel to the Unbreakable and Split. And basically is the final conclusion and installment of the Unbreakable Trilogy, so to speak. The film stars James McAvoy, who's coming back as his role as Kevin Crumb, and his other 23 personalities because of his dissociative identity disorder that he has, and he basically has another one that's very vicious and a very protective and intimidating presence, a physical entity known as the Beast, or the Horde, as it's also been called. You also have Bruce Willis coming back as his role as David Dunn, the guy who is unbreakable, and, unfortunately he has a weakness known as water. That's his kryptonite, pretty much. And we also have, of course, Samuel L. Jackson coming back as Elijah Price, David's arch nemesis from Unbreakable, who's also known as Mr. Glass because of the fact that his bones are very brittle and can break easily. We also have Anya Taylor-Joy coming back for a role as Casey from Split, who was basically one of the survivors that the Beast, or really Kevin, had spared because of his, connection of abuse, apparently. And then you also have a new character named Ellie Staple, who's played by Sarah Paulson, the psychiatrist who's trying to convince that our three main characters here are nothing more than, are just in delusions of grandeur because of their, super-inhuman ability, pretty much. Then you also have Charlayne Woodard, who is Elijah Price's mother in Unbreakable. Then you also, believe it or not, have Spencer Treat Clark, who coming back as David Dunn's son, Joseph, from Unbreakable as well. So all in all, you have a pretty good cast right there. As for the film, honestly, this is going to be a tough one. It's a very divisive film, honestly. I don't completely hate it, but I do hate how it really ended. I really despised the character arc towards the end. It was really unnecessary, and I'll get to that eventually. And it's kind of I can understanding from the psychiatric point of view. You're trying to illustrate what the plan is and trying to get this, have this understanding of how these characters are interacting with each other, how they differ, or what they're going through, and I understand that, but it kind of drags the film down, and that's another problem I had. But definitely the acting is not the problem. All the actors do a fantastic job, especially James McAvoy. Doing a personality like that's definitely not easy, but I'll get to that. So I'll get on to the plot. So basically, it takes place like 3 weeks after the events in Split. Kevin has, or really the Horde, has basically continued his reign of terror and has kidnapped 4 cheerleaders. We also see that, meanwhile, David and his son, Joseph, are working together, trying to track down criminals. And earlier you saw that these two stupid teenagers are basically out in the street kind of knocking a guy out physically and then videotaping it so they can put it on YouTube. Eventually, somehow, David is able to track him down. I'm guessing he was watching them, hence why he's also known as the Overseer. So, I forgot to mention that. But anyways, he throws one of those guys to the side of the wall, and presumably he does the same guy that was uploading the video, but you don't see that. And of course, I don't know if I mentioned this, but his son and him, and his David Dunn's son and himself are also working together as, in a security business, is selling basically a security equipment. I'm guessing involves of cameras and whatnot. So you get that look into it. And also they're trying to track down the Horde, who is responsible for that kidnapping of those 3 girls and some other kidnappings. And somehow David's able to come across Kevin and his headwig persona because of his 23 personalities that he has. He also is able to learn the location of them because of the fact that if you've seen Unbreakable, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, he also has the ability to kind of, when he touches someone, he's able to see, he's able to see the perception of what happened previously, and he's able to get the location, being that the cheerleaders are held in this abandoned warehouse, and eventually he's able to find them and he frees them. However, the Beast has somehow returned, and they engage in this little fight scene between the Beast, or the Horde, and David. It's a well-shot sequence. I thought it was interesting how the camera would cut to these, I guess, somewhat close-ups. I guess it's maybe slightly medium. It would show Kevin's, expressions and mood, and it would show David's face and expressions as well. So I thought that was interesting. They engage in this hand-in-hand scene. You actually see what's going on. Like he's being thrown. They're both defending against each other, and eventually they get thrown out of the window together, which spills onto the streets, and it's raining. However, somehow they have been arrested, and of course we see that the psychiatrist Ellie Staple has guns pointed on them, and they know that they can't get out of there, and eventually they are taken to a mental institution where apparently we learn that Elijah Price, David's sworn enemy from Unbreakable, is being held there, and the doctor herself, Ellie Staple, played by Sarah Paulson, has, claimed that she works with patients that claim they have superpowers or special powers. And she's been, and according to her, she claims that they have been given, she's been given 3 days to kind of evaluate their situation and persuade that, David, Kevin, and Elijah are normal people who have these delusions of grandeur, that they're superhuman people, so to speak. And she also knows the weaknesses. Like apparently, when they're in their rooms, for example, Kevin's weaknesses. Apparently, if you flash on the lights, it's basically to prevent from Kevin for advancing and advancing and showing his aggression towards the doctors that are bringing him food or trying to talk to him. And basically, when the light flashes on him, it would actually change to a different personality. So that's interesting. And then we also see when David's in his room, apparently there's a whole bunch of these holes which would produce water if he tried to, escape or whatnot, because she knows about his weakness. And you kind of wonder what's really going on, is this to threaten them and whatnot, but you'll eventually find out later. So basically, whenever they are going through this evaluation at the mental institution, she tries to convince, she tries to convince, like I said earlier, that these people are just, try to poison David, Elijah, and Kevin, that they are all, basically not superhumans. And especially with David, Ellie Staple claims that he's basically has the same ability as what trained magicians do. And then, while also trying to pursue that through the personalities of Dennis and Patricia, that the Beast, is just copying rock climbers, and saying that even though he took shots from the shotgun, the shells were defective, the cartridges were specifically defective, and that even though he was able to bend the bars of the door, apparently the bars are really old or something like that, and were brittle and were on the verge of falling apart anyway. So something along those lines. And apparently this evaluation, who is attracted to Elijah, who we don't really see till like maybe 40 plus minutes, and he really doesn't, and honestly Samuel Jackson doesn't really speak for a whole lot. He doesn't speak for like an hour. He's just mainly like twitching quite a bit in the film. But it's apparently a part of his master plan to try to, reach the Beast and convince him to break out, so that they eventually all can show the world that superhumans like them exist, and that this is definitely not a grand illusion like Staple has been claiming. So from that point of view, we see that Elijah has gone through certain methods to try to make that happen. Though, of course, supposedly he is caught, and he's to have a lobotomy, I believe, and have laser surgery, but apparently it has no effect because he actually anticipated this happening, which is why he's been known as being called the mastermind, or the exact opposite of David. So in the end, he's able to somehow disable. He's able to kill off one of the security people. I forget what the character's name is, by using a piece of glass literally and slashing his throat. And he's able to hack into the security system feed and also disable all the security options on their rooms, and even including David, because he wants to convince him that he definitely has a superhero power, but he also has the agenda of trying to get the Beast and David to fend off against each other once more. And eventually they do that. He actually wanted to originally supposedly do this on this tower where they would really be exposed, but it actually doesn't go that way. And eventually, also during that time, I forgot to mention, Joseph, Casey, and Elijah's mother try to convince them, or try to aid them in trying to getting them out, because these are definitely not normal people. And Casey, even though was abused, she was able to connect with the Kevin personality, and she actually visited him in this one scene. It's a very touching scene because she was able to get him to come out of, or get out of these personalities and get the real person in there for briefly, but it only lasts so long. So, and of course you see Joseph try to convince the doctor that it's not what it is. He's just whatever, and that doesn't convince the doctor. And Price's mother tries to convince Elijah's been through a lot and whatnot. That still doesn't convince them. They were all unsuccessful to try to aid their associates, but they fell. Anywho, aside from all that, eventually they all escape, and they basically David and the Beast face off each other around the mental institution grounds on the outside. Like the Beast is actually kidnaps these two nurses, puts them in a van, and both David and the Beast fight each other. Good camera work, like we see, like I said before, we see the expressions of their faces, and we actually see what's going on. We don't see any shaky camera. We actually see how physical they both are. So nice little use of the fight scenes between them, and basically Elijah's just watching and smiling and knowing this is what he wants. But then you also find out something later. Basically, all three, Joseph, Casey, and Elijah's mother, come by. And earlier you also see that Joseph did his research on Kevin's father, apparently. I forget what triggers that, but there was some kind of... it's been a while, but somehow he's able to visit some kind of institution and get some information about Kevin's father, who was originally going to help him. And you eventually learn that Kevin's father is the same person that died on that train that David survived on, and that Elijah is the one that orchestrated this whole accident just to find David. So basically, he's responsible for killing Kevin's father, and that's what Joseph is able to put out. At the same time, Elijah... Okay, sorry about that, folks. As I was saying, Elijah is able to tell Kevin of David's weakness. And of course, the Beast, of course, thanks him, but his idea was to protect Kevin, and he basically mortally wounds Elijah by fucking up his shoulder and by punching him in the gut or something, causing more breaks in his abdomen, fatally wounding him even further. So, and then of course, David and the Beast engage in another fight after David frees those nurses, and they both get thrown into the underworld, into some kind of tank, and it begins to crack, and David's able to break free, but he's weakened badly by it, and the Beast swears that they're going to finish this fight on the tower like they had planned. And when he's about to get going, excuse me, my right eye's kind of... Anyway, sorry about that. He's about to get going. Casey intervenes, wants to see Kevin, even though the Beast tries so hard to demand that she let him go. She keeps persuading him and says his full name, and Kevin's back, and they both have this great moment of connectivity, despite what the other personalities did to her, not Kevin. And eventually, unfortunately, his guard is lowered, and this allows one of Staples' men that she called earlier to take him out. And basically that's what happens, and he starts dying from his wounds. Also, at the same time, after David's being weak, after Elijah has, well, I can't remember, all around this at the same time, I'll go through it. I'll start with Kevin. Basically, he starts talking about being in the light, and, even though those personalities are sort of coming out, he's able to get one last moment as Kevin, saying that the light isn't so bad, and then eventually dies in Casey's arms. Then David, who is still weakened by the water, is apprehended by Staples' men, and you see there's a little clover-like tattoo on their hand. And eventually, when Staples walks over there and asks David to reach for her hand, and David gets a vision, and we realize that apparently she's part of some kind of secret society that basically is trying to keep the existence of superhumans a secret in some kind of restaurants, or some, so to speak. This is their hideout, which is odd. But anyways, Sable tells David that if she had convinced him that he was normal, she might have left him alone, but unfortunately the beast ruined that. And as a result, David is drowned in this fucking pothole that's filled with water and eventually dies. Then also, as Elijah is dying from his wounds, he mentions he is definitely not a mistake, and he's accepted that. And of course his mother tells him, no, you are something special, or something along those lines, and then eventually he dies. And of course, even though this was recorded, she basically has all the... Stapler has all the footage deleted, and she returns back to her little social secret Illuminati gathering, and basically said that her mission was a success and that she is ready for her next assignment. But apparently, we later learned that Elijah has hacked into the security feed and had somehow downloaded it to a private server, and it's been recorded somehow. And eventually it gets sent to both, not both, but it gets sent to Joseph, Casey, and Elijah's mother. And they, in the end, decide to they actually meet at the I think the subway station. And Joseph has coffee, gives both of them and himself the coffee. And apparently the footage goes everywhere, goes live. And we know that Stapler has a very emotional reaction, very upset by this. So it does kind of have somewhat of an uplifting ending, but yeah, the footage of the superhumans is now aware to the public, and who knows, maybe this might inspire more superhumans to come out. So I guess it's a brief little amount of hope, considering that the fates of our superhumans is a bit of a downbeat kind of ending for them, especially David. And I'll get to that. I don't know if I said if this was going to be a review/rant. I think I might have, but the biggest problem I had with this was maybe the character arc of David and how it was handled. In the beginning, it was good because we get to see him confront the beast and engage in a fight with them, which is cool. But unfortunately, it's short-lived because they get thrown out the window and they're captured. And throughout this mental institution, I feel like there wasn't really much of David. It was mainly more of Elijah and the Beast, or really James McAvoy's character. And I really don't like how David's character ended. It was just anticlimactic, a very pathetic death. Are you fucking kidding me, Shyamalan? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to rant on this. What the flying fuck were you thinking by killing him like that? If you're going to kill him, at least kill him off in a fucking heroic way. That's what he fucking deserved. He deserved to go out better than that. Not drown in a fucking pothole full with water. That's fucking bullshit. He deserved much better than that. Have him die heroically trying to save, Anna. Let's say that Anna had reached the beast for like a little bit, or no, reached Kevin, sorry, and then the beast somehow emerges again and is about to, take off her head. David intervenes, sacrifices himself, and they both end up in like a stream of water, and maybe he dies from that. Something along the lines like that, for example. Not this pathetic death that he got. He deserved better than that. That's what I'm saying. Unless if there was an alternate ending where he lived, maybe that's okay. But still, that's the main problem I had, was his character arc. What he went through. I feel like he was... When we get to the ward, it seemed like he was not in there much. It became, like I said, became more focused on Elijah and the Beast, which I can understand, but I wish they would have expanded his David's arc a little more. That's the problem I had. And the acting's definitely not the problem. And even though I liked how the institution delved into their doubts of whether if they're superheroes or not, or superhumans, one's a superhero, the other two are definitely supervillains, even though one is just really conflicted because of the 23 personalities. I do like how... I definitely liked how they interacted, especially the interactions between Elijah and the Beast, but it did kind of drag it down a bit, and that's what I didn't quite like as well, is that it dragged down the film a bit. I guess I can understand that, but it's a bit of a slow burn that I wish it was kind of done... I wish it was condensed. That's what I would have done. I just don't... I can understand them killing Elijah off, because you know what? He definitely deserved it, because he was definitely the mastermind and trying to fucking manipulate everything and everyone around him for his own advantage. That's what a supervillain does, which I can understand that. But, and I guess the other flaw was that it's kind of weird how Samuel Jackson didn't really... We didn't see him for like at least another 40 minutes, but he doesn't speak for at least an hour into the film, so he's just mainly twitching, like I said. So yeah, I felt like the part with the institution really dragged the film down a bit, and the definite ending of David Dunn really pissed me off. I didn't say it out loud in theater, but I was really upset with how they handled his death, like I've said numerous times. But fuck it, it's my review, it's my channel, I'm going to say what I want. I just... Give him a heroic death, for crying out loud, Shyamalan. That was a big major fuck up on your part. There's a reason why I don't quite trust you, because of your recent track record. After Signed, it's like you trailed off and forgot about what you were really good at. Like The Village, which I heard is boring as fucking hell. Lady in Water is goofy shit. The Happening is really funny shit that is supposed to be serious, but it's just funny and not that entertaining. Last Airbender, which I heard is dull shit and doesn't even you can't even get the characters' names right. That's really fucked up, dude. You might as well... Then you film Afterbirth, which I haven't seen, but I saw one clip of it to know it's pretty shitty. Denied! Sit down! Or the dialogue that you write where, I like it, but I think it's something bad. I'm like, what the fuck? And then The Visit, which looked like shit. The plot and the narrative didn't make sense, and then you have a fucking dirty diaper in there. But I did see some of Split, and it looked like you're definitely getting back on the right track, and the fact that you connected to that film to the Unbreakable film, which is interesting, especially when you bring Bruce Willis at the very tail end of the film. But I'm very disappointed at how you ended this trilogy very underwhelmingly, even though you do have that positive, uplifting ending where now the superheroes are now exposed, and the supporting characters can now find some peace in the end, even though it's not easy. But enough about the cons that I just now talked about. The pros, all the actors do a fantastic job. I mean, James McAvoy, to pull off 23 different personalities, that's not an easy task at all for him to do. So I gotta admire a man like that. And the guy has played Xavier and the film Wanted, and it's really too bad that I think another con to this is that it's too bad that you will not be playing this character again, because you really have evolved as an actor, and the fact that you were able to do something like this, I salute you, sir. Great job. And Bruce Willis, he does fine. The only problem is his character arc is really disappointing, and so... But for when he's there and whatnot, it's he does his job. Elijah, and of course Samuel L. Jackson, I like how his character was written to be the highly intelligent, mastermind behind all this. And the fact is, like I said, it looked like he was going to set this up on the tower, the final fight, but it turns out that was not really his intention, because, he's the mastermind. So, yeah. He does fine, even though in the first hour he doesn't speak, but when he does, when his plan comes to fruition, and the fact that apparently it's now becomes the fact that the villain is something you kind of want to root for, because you want to expose to the world that superhumans do exist, and you don't need some person telling you that's not the case and trying to prevent that from happening. So in a way, the villain kind of wins in a good way, interesting, which is pretty ballsy. So I'll give it that. And Sarah Paulson does a good job of playing the psychiatrist who acts like she's trying to treat them and trying to convince the fact that they are just living in a delusional fantasy world. And then, of course, she turns out she's kind of a villain herself, trying to prevent the superhumans from getting out in the world and covering all up their deaths and whatnot. Then the other supporting characters like Sarah Paulson, but Anya Taylor-Joy, even though she's not in there a whole lot, her role is very effective in the fact that she can convince a character like Kevin to come out and have an emotional connection because of her abuse and his abuse. So it's well done. And then Spencer Treat Clark, coming back as his son, he does a really great job in this film, and it's been a while since I've seen him in anything. The last time I really saw Spencer Treat Clark in anything was in an episode of SVV back in 2004, and that's almost 15 years ago. So, he actually does a really, really great job in this role, and I like to see him get some more roles in the future. I'm guessing he must have gone the independent route, because after those two films like Gladiator and Unbreakable, he really didn't seem to do a whole lot. So, and of course Charlayne Woodard, for what she's in, she does fine as Elijah's mother, and playing that supportive part to her son, the only one that ever treated him nicely and thought he was special. And I like how we get to see a little more of the comic book world enter in this, because there's always supervillains and superheroes, and I believe that's how Joseph was able to kind of try to research all the stuff about Kevin and his father. I like how they bring the comic world into here again. I can't really explain it, but I like how they make reference to that. But yeah, anywho, if you really want to give this a watch, see it on the cheap or something like that. If you're expecting a real action-packed not environmental, but an action-packed kind of thrill ride, you sadly may not get that. So, and you might feel like how I feel. For the first 20 minutes, it's kind of satisfying, but in the middle, it becomes like a slow burn, and it's somewhat necessary, but it really drags the film down. And unfortunately, even though you do get another fight in the end, unfortunately, all three of them die. But the one death that really upset me was Bruce Willis's character. He deserved a much better death, and you might really be disappointed by that. So, overall, I say give it a chance. It's your money, it's your dollar. I don't think this is something I will probably see again, because I think it was a very underwhelming end to the trilogy. And as for my grade or what I would give it, it's really hard to evaluate this film, so mainly I might give it probably a D+ or a C-. I don't know. I don't really completely hate the film, but I just think I think the trilogy should have ended better. And that's my personal opinion, and you can agree with me or disagree with me. It's up to you, folks. Anywho, well, I'm going to just end it right here, and I will see you guys in another video, whether it's a review or not. So, I will see y'all later, folks. Have a good one.